Hello, welcome to Doghead Tech and to an episode in a series where I try and take faulty gaming equipment and bring them back from the dead. In this episode we have a faulty DS Lite given to me by a friend of mine which has a broken hinge, meaning that the top lid flaps about quite a bit. The only way to sort this is to change the chassis, which I've purchased, and I'll show you which chassis that is in a bit. But without further ado, let's get this changed around. Right, so as I say, the hinge on this is totally snapped off. This is a really common fault with DS Lites. There was a bit too much resistance in this hinge when they manufactured them, meaning that there is a lot of failures on this. It simply just needs a chassis swap. If I turn it on, you can see that it works perfectly well. The screen's got a little bit of yellowing to it, that's on the LCD itself. It works perfectly okay though, and my friend has said that they don't want that changed, they just want the chassis swapped, which absolutely can totally do that. So it'll be a full disassembly, we won't need to clean any parts, we just need to install the new chassis. Although that's quite time consuming, I have done quite a few of these. So it should be a relatively quick fix, in theory, with no problems. But let's see what happens. I mean, in my last video I said that the Days of Play controller was going to be quite a simple fix. However, that turned out to be not the case whatsoever. So let's get this thing apart. So it has been a while since I've actually repaired one of these. So I did actually move house, me and my partner, 3-4 weeks ago. Hence why there was such a big gap between my last video and my video before that. But yeah, let's start disassembling this guy. So battery we know works perfectly well. Chewed up. So on the DS Lite, I mean, I mentioned in the intro that there was a slight manufacturing problem with them, being that wobbly hinge that I was talking about. However, there were a lot of things with the console that were very good, including the battery life. When it was released, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was about 14 to 16 hours worth of gameplay you'd be able to get out of a single charge. There are reports of people that stick them down or don't play them for a few years and then go back to it and turn them on and they come straight back on. There we go. So a little while ago I put up a video of me doing exactly the same work but with a Zelda chassis. But off the back of that shot I did have a couple of people get in touch just to ask a couple of queries as to sort of how easy it was, whether they had any problems fitting or putting it together. And it is an aftermarket chassis that I'm going to be putting it into this, it's not an official Nintendo one. So there are some different parts. There are some things that are manufactured a little bit differently to how an OEM or an original part would be made. And I'll cover that sort of as we're putting it together and kind of highlight some of the areas that are a little bit tricky. Right. On reassembly, we do need to be a little bit careful about this power button. I can't tell you how many power buttons I've broken refitting these into chassis, and I still make that mistake from time to time, so it's something just to be conscious of. We're getting kind of close to where the problem piece was, so after a few more screws, or a couple more screws rather, that'll rear its head and I can show you kind of the extent of the damage that we're actually repairing. I mean, I mentioned about a good point with these consoles being its battery life, but another good point is the fact that they don't just play DS games, they play GBA games. So they're a great inexpensive solution to playing a lot of your older titles, which I think that's a really good selling point. You know what, I'm just gonna, yeah, there we go. Okay, so I need to be a little bit careful here. I just need to thread this ribbon cable through this slot. Ribbon cables are pretty fragile. There we are. So this is the part that's been damaged. This is the part that fractures very often. So we need to further disassemble this, take out all the insides, all the LCD. Literally, we're breaking this down to piece parts. There is one more little ring just to extract from this hinge. You have to roll this ribbon cable up. It's very fiddly, which is why, unfortunately, I can't get a very good shot of this on camera. So I'll just hold that in there for a sec. This part of the hinge, however, can come out. There we go. Stiff hinge that was installed out of the factory, yeah, it causes this fracture. And as I say, it was a common fault with the DS Lite. Constant up and down, flipping of the lid. They actually took that on board for future designs and rectified that with the DSi. So I mentioned earlier that me and my partner moved house. So welcome to the new Doghead studio, whatever you want to call it. It's a little bit more roomy. What you can't see out of shot is that I've inherited a rather jazzy chandelier. I could do with painting the walls as well because they're a nice light purple colour, which I don't have an issue with purple, but at the same time, light purple isn't my first choice. Come on. So this should just slide down and pop out. However, this is being a little bit troublesome. Come on, there we go. And I think this would probably be a good time to tell you what chassis I'm actually going to be swapping this round for, seeing as we're near the end and we need to start thinking about how we're going to install this. So, and all we're going to be doing is changing it to a Mario limited edition chassis. Just let me stress that this isn't an OEM piece, this is an aftermarket piece purchased off of eBay. They're plentiful and there's multiple around, various different designs. This won't be sold on my store. I would only sell OEM stuff, but this has been requested by a mate of mine, as I say. So if I take this off, you can actually see the finish on it is really nice. There are certain things that you can kind of see quality-wise, like this is a little bit thinner. All your screws, all your bits and buttons. One thing I would say with the buttons is that the print on the button is exactly that. It's printed, as opposed to the original buttons, which you can see this white backing, it's actually molded. So the printed buttons, that would rub off after a little bit of gameplay, whereby the molded buttons would just go a little bit shiny. So what I'll look at doing is installing the original buttons into the aftermarket chassis, so then that doesn't happen. And there are a couple of little things which I'll take off the original chassis and put into the aftermarket chassis just to kind of give it a little bit more of an authentic feel. And I'll explain that as I'm going through as well. So let's start with this top section. So let's just fold this. This is the tricky bit, and it always has been, is getting these ribbon cables through these holes. What you don't want to do is damage this cable in any way, otherwise the top screen won't work, and then you have to disassemble the whole thing again in order to replace it. So we want to avoid that. There we go. Sliding him up. So leaving these little rubber grommets off, these little rubber covers, I'm just going to leave them off for the sec. We'll make that one of the last things that we do. Now it's time to get the bottom section in, motherboard included, and connect up this top screen. So now we need to feed these guys through. They're the easy bits to get in. But now it's this ribbon again we need to get through. Right, so with this ribbon, slot this back through here, put it through enough so that we're able then to slide this bottom part of the chassis over the top of the ribbon cable. There we go. Fantastic. Very carefully, I just want to make my way around this screen. As I say, I don't want to separate any of the layers on this digitizer. There we go. Right, so whilst that's not free of scratches, it looks pretty good if you ask me. Yeah, you can tell it's been a while since I've done this. I need to route this mic cable underneath this part. Okay, so we need to pull it back up again. Right, so we're going to take a very small piece of Kapton tape. Just apply this down within the console. Just to hold this cable in place. Usually on an OEM chassis, this would hold. However, on this aftermarket one, it's not. So we just need to give it a little bit of a helping hand. Boom. And I think we're in. Right, now we need to run this wire underneath the card reader. And it's kind of a bit of a trial and error. If I do it first time, I'll be amazed. Oh, second time though, I'll take that. And we are in business. Right, so straight away, tell you what, I'm actually going to peel this off just so I can actually get a bit more of an understanding as to what's happening here. I think I need to trim these posts off because they're way too big and they don't line up. So just like I had to do in the Zelda one, I'm going to have to do the same for this and shave these posts down. I don't think the post for this shoulder button is lining up. And that's the problem with these aftermarket chassis, is that they don't always line up. I've just noticed on here, on this side we don't have any flex, on this side we have a little bit of flex. So when I put this in, I might just try pushing this button in a little bit and hopefully that will hold. Let's see if I push this in, whether it clicks in. The problem with that, neither of those shoulder buttons are working. So I'm not going to be able to put the new back on this because it doesn't fit. You can see now when I've taken this out, that works. Come to the back of this chassis, you can tell how ill-fitting it is because this post is actually stuck. So what I'm going to have to do is install the original back onto this. I'll tell you one thing I will try. Does it sit any better if I use an original button? Because I'm not going to lie, these buttons are a bit ropey. You can see there's like little bits of plastic coming off. The moulding's pretty terrible. If you look at the insides of these, so the moulds are slightly different. Right, so I've installed the original buttons, shoulder buttons, the L and R's, and they work perfectly, and the original base, and it's not interfering at all with how that presses down. So the buttons weren't right on the aftermarket parts, and the base wasn't right on the aftermarket parts. But this is the pitfalls of using manufacturers and parts that aren't original. The aim of this was to get a device that looked brand new and that played like brand new. We'll be able to fulfill one of those. It's just a shame that it won't look brand new. So these are the original rubber covers, came on the original chassis. So the hinge works perfectly. There we go. Back in business. There we go. And that, folks, is one very nice looking lid. I think it looks great. I think it looks like a really, really nice console. It's just a little bit of a shame that we've had to put the original base back on, which has this little wear here, a little bit of wear around the charging port. But other than that, it's pretty flawless. I mean, I'm hoping that My friend really likes this. I think he will do. It's a bit of a shame that we've had to use or reuse the base here. Even though this fix took far longer than what it should have, I think it's demonstrated the pitfalls of trying to fit aftermarket parts and replace OEM parts with ones that maybe have not been manufactured terribly well. That being said, I mean, cosmetically, the device looks pretty great, and I mean, I'm kind of flashing it around on camera at the moment, and I'm dead happy with how it looks. So that brings to a close this video, so thank you very much for watching. If you have liked what you've seen, then do like and subscribe. It is hugely appreciated. This won't be going up for sale on my store, but if you would like to see other items, then the link is in the description below. So thank you very much again for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon. Bye.